The wrench slipped and Danny Reeves cut his knuckle for the third time that day. He cursed quietly and wiped the blood on his already dirty jumpsuit. Somewhere above him, in the upper rings of Station Greyhold, rich aliens lived in beautiful domes with clean air and soft lighting. Down here in the maintenance tunnels, Danny fixed broken engines for people who could barely afford to pay him. He had been doing this work for 15 years. Ever since he aged out of the station orphanage at 18, he had survived by being good with his hands. Ships came to him broken. They left working. That was his gift, and it kept food on his table. Danny Reeves? A voice called from the tunnel entrance. Danny looked up. A tall figure stood there, dressed in the silver robes of a compact arbiter. These were the officials who handled legal matters across all species in the galaxy. Danny had never spoken to one in his life. "That's me," Danny said, climbing out from under the engine he was repairing. The arbiter was a Palaxian, with gray skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. It held out a data tablet. "You have been named as the sole inheritor of property belonging to one Fossick Dren, deceased. A residential dome in the upper rings, Section 7. Danny blinked. "I think you have the wrong person. You are Danny Reeves, human, registration number 447 Alpha Greyhold." "Yes, but I don't know anyone named Fossick Dren." The arbiter pushed the tablet toward him. The deceased was a Varadi male, aged 212 standard years. He specifically named you in his final documents. The dome and all its contents now belong to you. Danny took the tablet with shaking hands. He scrolled through the information. The dome was worth more money than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. It made no sense. Then he saw the note, handwritten in shaky letters at the bottom of the document. "You fixed my ship once. You were kind. Now I trust you to find what I could not." A memory surfaced. 5 years ago, maybe 6. An old Varadi had come to Danny with a cargo ship that was falling apart. The alien had been desperate and clearly poor. Danny had worked for 2 days straight to get the ship running again. When the Varadi asked how much he owed, Danny had looked at the old alien's tired eyes and said almost nothing. "I remember him," Danny whispered. "There are parties contesting the inheritance," the arbiter said. "Trading guilds with interests in that section. You should claim the property quickly, before legal complications grow." Danny nodded slowly, still staring at the note. "Find what I could not." What did that mean? 2 hours later, Danny stood outside the dome in the upper rings. He had never been to this part of the station before. The air smelled clean. The lights were warm and golden. Aliens of a dozen species walked past in expensive clothing, giving him strange looks. His dirty jumpsuit did not belong here. The dome was old but beautiful. Its walls curved upward like a shell, covered in patterns that might have been decoration or might have been writing. Danny pressed his hand to the entry panel. It scanned him and the door slid open. Inside was chaos. Not bad chaos, but the chaos of a life fully lived. Every surface held something. Star charts covered the walls. Books in 100 languages filled shelves that reached the ceiling. Strange artifacts sat on tables and hung from hooks. Fossick Dren had been a collector, or perhaps a researcher, or perhaps both. Danny walked slowly through the rooms, touching nothing, just looking. He found journals filled with notes he could not read. He found equipment that might have been scientific instruments. He found photographs of star systems he did not recognize, and then he heard it dot a click somewhere deep within the dome. The sound of a lock opening. Danny froze. The dome's security system had scanned him at the door. Had it triggered something else? He listened carefully and heard a faint hum coming from below his feet. He searched for a way down and found it hidden behind a shelf of old navigation devices. A staircase led to a basement level that did not appear on any official station blueprints. Danny took a deep breath and walked down into the darkness to the bottom. He found a hidden laboratory. Clean white walls. Sealed containers. Equipment that looked advanced and expensive. Data storage units lined one wall, their lights blinking softly. And in the center of the room, a stasis pod. Danny approached it slowly. Through the frosted glass, he could see a small shape. A creature about the size of a cat, covered in scales that shimmered blue and silver even in the dim light. It had 4 eyes, all closed. It looked peaceful, sleeping. He found a control panel on the side of the pod. The power readings were critical. The stasis field was failing. According to the display, the creature had maybe 2 weeks left before the pod shut down completely. Danny looked at the sleeping creature, then at the laboratory around him, then at his own rough hands still stained with engine grease. "What were you trying to find, old man?" he asked the empty room. The creature in the pod shifted slightly, and Danny could have sworn he saw one of its four eyes open just a crack before closing again. He had inherited a dome. But the real inheritance was this: a secret, a mystery, and a life that depended on what he did next. 3 days passed before Danny found the courage to return to the basement laboratory. He spent that time reading through Fossick Dren's journals, learning what he could about the old variety and his decades-long obsession. The creature in the stasis pod had no name in any database. Fossick had searched for 40 years and found nothing. He had discovered it aboard a derelict ship drifting in empty space, the only living thing on a vessel whose crew had been dead for centuries. The creature had been in stasis then too, somehow surviving while everything else on the ship had turned to dust. Fossick had brought it home and spent the rest of his life trying to find out where it came from. He failed, but he never stopped caring for it, never stopped hoping. Now that responsibility had passed to Danny, he sat beside the stasis pod and watched the power readings drop slowly toward zero. 12 days left, maybe 11. The creature slept on, unaware that its life was measured in hours. Danny could report this to the authorities. The compact had protocols for discovering unknown species, but he had read enough of Fossick's journals to know what would happen. Years of study, decades of bureaucracy. The creature would spend the rest of its life in a laboratory, poked and examined by scientists who saw it as a specimen rather than a person, and that was the best case. The trading guilds who wanted the dome had already sent representatives to pressure Danny into selling. If they discovered the creature, they would see only profit. An unknown species meant unknown technology, unknown biology, unknown value. Danny had grown up unwanted. He knew what it felt like to be seen as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be helped. He would not do that to this creature. On the 4th day, he made his decision. He initiated the wake sequence. The stasis pod hummed as its systems began the slow process of revival. Frost melted from the glass. The creature's scales shifted from dull gray to brilliant blue as circulation returned. Danny watched with his heart beating fast, not knowing what to expect. The four eyes opened. They were silver, like mirrors, and they reflected Danny's face back at him in 4 different angles. The creature stared at him without moving. Danny could see intelligence in those eyes. Fear too, but something else. Curiosity, maybe. Hope. "Hello," Danny said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature made a sound. Not a word, but something musical, like a question played on strings. Danny opened the pod slowly. The creature did not attack or run. It watched him with those silver eyes, shaking slightly, waiting to see what he would do. "You must be hungry," Danny said. "Let me find you something to eat." He searched the laboratory and found sealed containers of nutrient paste. Fossick had prepared for this moment, even though he had not lived to see it. Danny opened a container and set it near the creature, then stepped back to give it space. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the creature moved forward, sniffed the food, and began to eat. Its movements were graceful despite its fear. Whatever this species was, it had not evolved to be clumsy. Over the next week, trust built slowly. Danny talked to the creature constantly, not because he expected it to understand, but because his voice seemed to calm it. He told it about his life, about the station, about the stars outside. He told it about Fossick, who had loved it enough to search for its home until the day he died. The creature listened. And it learned. Danny started with simple words. Yes. No. Food. Safe. Friend. He pointed to himself and said, "Danny," until the creature could repeat it back in its musical voice. Then one evening, as they sat together in the dome's main room, the creature pointed to the window where stars glittered against the black. "Home," it said. The word was clear. Not mimicry, but meaning. The creature understood what it was saying. Danny felt his chest tighten. "We'll find it," he promised. "I don't know how, but we'll find your home." A knock at the dome's entrance made them both jump. Danny quickly guided the creature into a back room before answering the door that a Kreth stood outside. The species was known throughout the compact for their skill in business and their complete lack of mercy. This one wore expensive clothing and a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I am Overseer Pollux," the Kreth said. "I represent interests who wish to purchase this dome." I am prepared to offer you a very generous price. It's not for sale, Danny said. The smile remained fixed. Perhaps you should think carefully about that. A mechanic from the lower rings does not belong in the upper sections. Accidents happen to those who forget their place. After Pollux left, Danny sat in the darkness for a long time. The creature, which he had started calling Little Blue for the color of its scales, came to sit beside him. It pressed against his leg the way a frightened child might seek comfort from a parent. Danny had spent his whole life fixing things that were broken. Engines, ships, systems. Now he had to fix something much more complicated. He had to find a way to bring Little Blue home before their enemies found them both. Little Blue learned fast. Too fast to be anything but deeply intelligent. Within 2 weeks, the creature had a vocabulary of over 100 words and was combining them into simple sentences. Danny had never taught anyone anything before, but he found himself enjoying it. The creature was eager, curious, and surprisingly funny once it learned how to make jokes. They developed a routine. Mornings were for language lessons. Afternoons, Danny worked through Fossic's research files, searching for clues about Little Blue's origin. Evenings, they would sit by the window and watch ships come and go from the station docks. Where? Little Blue would ask, pointing at each departing vessel. I don't know, Danny would answer. Somewhere out there. Home out there. Maybe. We'll find it. Fossic's research pointed to a region of space called the Hollow Reach. It was a dead zone, officially empty, considered too dangerous for regular travel. But the old variety had found evidence of ancient transmissions coming from deep within. He believed Little Blue's species might still exist there, hidden from a galaxy that had forgotten them. The problem was getting there. Danny was a mechanic, not a pilot. He had no ship and no money to buy one. The inheritance included the dome and its contents, but most of those contents were worthless except to collectors and historians. His neighbor solved the first problem. Grandmother Sills was a Moravan, one of the oldest species in the compact. She had lived on Station Greyhold for 60 years and seemed to know everyone's business. When Danny politely asked her to stop visiting because he was busy, she pushed past him into the dome and said, "Show me." Danny considered lying. But something about the old alien's steady gaze made him feel like a child caught stealing sweets. He brought her down to the laboratory. Grandmother Sills looked at Little Blue for a long time. Little Blue looked back. Then the Moravan laughed, a deep, warm sound that filled the room. Fossick always said he would find something wonderful someday, she said. I thought he was just a lonely old fool. I was wrong. You knew him. We were friends. He trusted very few people, but he trusted humans. He said your species had a gift for caring about things that weren't yours to care about. She turned to face Danny. You're planning to take this creature home, aren't you? I'm planning to try. Good. You'll need help. I was a navigation officer before I retired. I haven't forgotten how to read the stars. The second problem solved itself when Danny realized he already owned a ship. It was in the station's salvage yards, listed among Fossick's possessions, a decommissioned survey vessel that had been sitting in storage for 30 years. Officially, it was worthless scrap, but Danny was a mechanic. He saw potential where others saw garbage. He recruited Pell, a young Drenix who worked in cargo handling. Danny had fixed her family's shuttle 2 years ago and refused payment because they couldn't afford it. Now she volunteered without being asked. I owe you, Pell said. Besides, I've always wanted to see what's beyond the trade routes. The three of them worked on the ship for 2 weeks. Danny rebuilt the engines. Grandmother Sills restored the navigation systems. Pell handled supplies and modifications. Little Blue watched everything with those silver eyes, sometimes helping to hold tools or pass components. The work was hard but good. Danny had never been part of a team before. He found that he liked it. Then Overseer Pollux returned. This time, he didn't knock. Danny came back to the dome one evening to find the door forced open and the rooms torn apart. Nothing was taken, but everything had been searched. A message had been left on the central display. Last chance to sell. Pollux knew Danny was hiding something. He just didn't know what yet. We need to leave soon, Grandmother Sills said when Danny told her what happened. Before he finds the basement. The ship isn't ready. Then make it ready. Danny worked through the night. Pell brought extra parts from the cargo docks. Grandmother Sills ran diagnostics until her eyes ached. By dawn, the ship was functional. Not perfect, but functional. They moved Little Blue to the vessel under cover of darkness. The creature seemed to understand the urgency. It stayed silent. Stayed hidden, stayed close to Danny. Home soon, it asked as they settled into the cramped cabin. Danny looked at the navigation charts showing the hollow reach, that vast, empty space where answers might be waiting. Home soon, he promised. I hope. 24 hours later, Station Greyhold Security announced an investigation into Danny Reeves for suspected smuggling of illegal artifacts. His dome was to be searched immediately. By then, the little survey ship was already gone, slipping through maintenance tunnels that only a mechanic would know, heading for the darkness between stars. Behind them, Overseer Pollux watched the escape on his sensors and smiled. He had been hoping they would run. A chase was so much more profitable than a purchase. Nobody traveled to the Hollow Reach. The region had earned its name honestly. A vast stretch of space where nothing lived, nothing grew, and ships had a habit of disappearing without trace. Official navigation charts marked it in red with simple warnings. Do not enter. Hazardous. Empty. But Danny's small crew was not looking for what was easy to find. The survey ship, which Pell had named Hope's Chance as a joke that nobody laughed at, made good progress for the first 3 days. Grandmother Sills proved her skills immediately, finding safe paths through asteroid fields that should have taken weeks to navigate. The old Morven spent most of her time at the navigation console, humming softly to herself. Little Blue stayed close to the viewing window, watching the stars slide past. The creature had grown quieter since leaving the station. Danny worried at first, but then he noticed something strange. Little Blue was humming too, the same patterns as Grandmother Sills, but slightly different. Older somehow. Where did you learn that song? Danny asked. Little Blue touched its chest. Always no. Inside. On the 4th day, they entered the Hollow Reach proper. The difference was immediate. Stars became sparse. Dust clouds swallowed the light. The ship's sensors showed nothing in any direction, just emptiness stretching to infinity. Pell did not handle it well. The young Drenix paced the small cabin, her scales changing color with her anxiety. There's nothing here, she said. We're chasing ghosts. Fossick found something, Danny reminded her. Signals. Transmissions. Evidence. Fossick spent 40 years searching and died without answers. What makes us different? It was Little Blue who answered. The creature climbed onto a console and began to sing. Not words, but pure tones, rising and falling in complex patterns. The song filled the cabin, beautiful and sad and somehow very old. Grandmother Sills went pale. Her 3 eyes widened. That's a navigation harmonic, she whispered. I studied them in the academy. They're ancient, from before the compact existed. Nobody uses them anymore. What does it mean? Danny asked. It means your little friend has been trying to find its way home for longer than my entire species has been traveling the stars. Little Blue's song changed, becoming more urgent. It pointed toward a region of space that looked exactly like every other region. Dark, empty, dead. That way, it said. Home that way. They followed the song. On the 6th day, Pollux found them. His ship was faster and better armed, a sleek predator compared to their patched-together survey vessel. His voice came through the communication system, calm and amused. Danny Reeves, I must thank you for leading me here. Whatever you're hiding, it must be valuable for you to run so far. Surrender now, and I'll let your crew live. Resist, and I'll take what I want from your wreckage. Danny cut the communication and looked at his crew. Grandmother Sills was already plotting evasive courses. Pell had moved to the engineering station, ready to squeeze every bit of power from the engines. Little Blue pressed against Danny's leg, trembling but not crying. We can't outrun him, Danny said. But we don't have to. I spent 15 years learning how ships work. Let's see if I learned anything useful. What followed was not really a battle. It was a mechanic using his knowledge against a hunter who only knew how to chase. Danny vented atmosphere from one side of the ship to spin them through an asteroid cluster that Pollux couldn't follow. He rerouted power to create sensor ghosts that confused the pursuing vessel. He knew exactly how much stress each system could take and pushed them to the edge without breaking. Grandmother Sills guided them through impossible gaps. Pell kept the engines running when they should have failed. Little Blue sang coordinates that somehow always led to safety. For 3 days they played this game of chase and escape. Pollux grew frustrated. His communications became angry, then threatening, then promising rewards for surrender. Danny ignored them all. On the 9th day, Little Blue's song changed again. The creature stood at the window, all four eyes fixed on something nobody else could see. There, it said. There. Danny looked at the sensors. They showed nothing. But when he looked out the window with his own eyes, he saw a faint shimmer against the darkness. A planetary body, hidden by natural interference that blocked scanners, but not light. Found it. Grandmother Sills breathed. Stars above, we actually found it. They descended toward the hidden world. Behind them, Pollux' ship emerged from an asteroid field, battered but still functional, still hunting, but Danny barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the surface below, where lights were burning. Small lights, scattered across the dark landscape, but unmistakably artificial. Little Blue's people were still alive, and Danny had brought their lost child home. The surface of the planetoid was cold and quiet. Danny stepped out of the ship first, his breath fogging in the thin atmosphere. Behind him, Little Blue made a sound he had never heard before, something between a cry and a song. The creature rushed past him, scales glowing bright in the dim light. Figures emerged from the nearest structures. They looked like Little Blue, but larger, their scales showing patterns of age and experience. They moved slowly at first, uncertain. Then one of them saw the small, glowing creature running toward them. The sound that followed needed no translation. It was recognition. It was joy. It was family reunited after impossibly long separation. Danny watched as Little Blue was surrounded by its people. The creatures touched and sang and wept in their own way. Whatever Danny had expected to feel in this moment, he had not expected the tightness in his chest, the burning in his eyes. He had never had a family. But watching this, he understood what it meant. An older creature approached him. Her scales were silver with age, her four eyes clouded but still sharp. She walked with the careful dignity of someone who had carried heavy responsibilities for a very long time. "You brought our lost one home," she said. Her voice was musical like Little Blue's, but deeper, more controlled. "In 10,000 years, no outsider has done this. Fossick Dren searched for 40 years, Danny said. I just finished what he started." Fossick Dren. Yes, we felt his searching, though we could not answer. Our people chose silence long ago, after others took our gifts and used them for destruction. The elder looked around at the small settlement. We hid here to survive. We have been dying slowly ever since. Danny saw it now. The structures were old, poorly maintained. The Ethoni, as the elder called her people, numbered perhaps 1,000. A handful of survivors from what had once been a great civilization. "Why didn't you ask for help?" he asked. "We were afraid. We built wonders once. Ships that sang between stars. Machines that healed any wound. Others saw our creations and wanted them, no matter the cost. Wars were fought. Billions died. We decided that hiding was better than causing more destruction. You've been alone for 10,000 years. Yes, and we grew smaller each generation. Soon we will be gone, and the galaxy will forget we ever existed." Danny thought about the station orphanage where he had grown up. He thought about being alone, unwanted, invisible. He thought about how one act of kindness from a stranger could change everything. "It doesn't have to be that way," he said. Before the elder could respond, alarms rang out across the settlement. Danny looked up and saw Pollux's ship descending through the thin atmosphere, weapons charging. The Kretha's voice echoed from speakers mounted on his hull. "I knew you would lead me to something valuable, mechanic. A hidden civilization? Technology worth more than entire star systems? You've made me very rich today." The Ethoni scattered in panic. They had no weapons, no defenses. They had chosen peace 10,000 years ago and never learned war. Danny grabbed the elder's arm. "Is there anything? Any way to fight back? We gave up violence long ago." "Then what about running? Hiding?" The elder looked at the sky where Pollux's ship was landing, troops already deploying. "Where would we go? This planetoid is all we have left." Danny's crew reached him. Grandmother Sills had found a metal pipe somewhere. Pell's scales had turned the deep red of her species' battle rage. Little Blue stood with its people, no longer the lost child, but a member of its community, ready to face whatever came. "We can't win this fight," Grandmother Sills said quietly. "I know. So what do we do?" Danny looked at the Ethoni, at their ancient structures, at the frightened faces of a people who had survived 10,000 years of hiding only to be discovered by the worst possible enemy. He was a mechanic. He fixed things that were broken. Sometimes that meant engines and ships. Sometimes it meant something bigger. We buy them time, Danny said. Whatever happens to us, we give them time to figure out another option. He walked toward Pollux' forces alone. The Kreth watched him approach with amusement. The hero arrives. What exactly do you think you're going to do, mechanic? Whatever I have to, Danny said. These people aren't your property. They're not artifacts to be sold. Everything is property to someone. Everything has a price. These creatures will make me the wealthiest being in the compact. Pollux gestured to his soldiers. Take him. Kill the others if they resist. Behind Danny, the Ethoni began to sing. It started with Little Blue, a single voice raised in the darkness. Then others joined, one by one, until the entire settlement was filled with harmony. The song was not words, but something older, something powerful. The ground beneath Danny's feet began to hum. Pollux's smile faded. What is this? What are they doing? Danny didn't know, but he recognized the look in the elder's eyes as she sang. It was the look of someone who had remembered something long forgotten. Hope. The song grew stronger. Danny felt it in his bones, in his teeth, in the core of his being. The planetoid itself was responding, systems that had been dormant for millennia coming back to life. This isn't possible, Pollux shouted. This is just rock and dust. But it wasn't. Danny understood now what Fossic's research had hinted at. The planetoid was not natural. It was a ship, the last and greatest creation of the Ethoni civilization. They had hidden inside their own vessel, using its shielding to disappear from a galaxy that had hunted them to near extinction. Ancient machinery hummed beneath the surface. Lights flickered on across structures that had been dark for centuries. The Ethoni sang louder, their voices weaving together into harmonies that served as commands, passwords, activation sequences. Pollux's soldiers opened fire, but their weapons sparked and died. The Ethoni technology was not designed to kill. It simply made killing impossible. Energy shields wrapped around every living being on the surface, protecting them from harm. No, Pollux screamed. He ran toward his ship, desperate to escape with whatever he could salvage. Danny let him go. The Ethoni could have destroyed the Kreth and his entire crew. Their ancestors had built weapons that could crack planets. But they chose differently. They always chose differently. Pollux's ship lifted off and fled into space, empty-handed and beaten. The Ethoni watched him go without anger, without hatred. They simply let him leave. When the last echo of the song faded, the elder approached Danny. Her eyes were bright now, no longer clouded by age and despair. She stood straighter than before. You reminded us of something we had forgotten, she said. We thought hiding was our only choice. We thought the galaxy would always be cruel. But you came. A stranger. A human. You risked everything to bring one lost child home. Danny shook his head. I didn't do anything special. I just did what was right. That is what makes your species remarkable. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder. We have watched the galaxy for 10,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have seen species destroy themselves and each other. But humans are different. You are young and chaotic and often foolish. But you care about things that are not yours to care about. You protect creatures you have never met. You adopt the lost things others throw away. Little Blue approached and pressed against Danny's leg. The creature's silver eyes looked up at him with something that needed no translation. Love. Gratitude. Family. What will you do now? Danny asked the elder. We will emerge from hiding. Carefully. Slowly. We will share some of our knowledge with species who prove worthy. We will try to trust again. She paused. We would like you to help us. You could be our voice to the galaxy, our bridge between what we were and what we might become. Danny looked at Grandmother Sills, who was examining Ethoni technology with undisguised wonder. He looked at Pell, who was already making friends with young Ethoni her own age. He looked at Little Blue, finally home after impossibly long wandering. I'm just a mechanic, he said. You are someone who fixes broken things, the elder replied. Our relationship with the galaxy is very broken indeed. Will you help us repair it? 6 months later, Danny stood in a new dome on Station Greyold. It was a gift from the Ethoni, built with their technology, beautiful and strange and full of light. The trading guilds had been forced to drop all charges against him once the Compact learned about his role in establishing contact with a lost civilization. Grandmother Sills ran a school now, teaching young Ethoni how to navigate a galaxy their ancestors had fled. Pell captained a ship that carried messages and goods between the hidden world and compact space. Pollux had disappeared, his reputation destroyed, his fortune gone. Little Blue visited often. It had family now, a community, a home. But it never forgot the human who had found it sleeping in a basement laboratory and chosen to help. Danny was reading through new messages when an alert came through. A request from Station Greyhold's orphanage. A young human child needed placement. No family. No prospects. Nobody who wanted to take responsibility. Danny thought about Fossick Dren, who had seen a dirty mechanic charging almost nothing for his work and decided that person was worth trusting with his greatest secret. He thought about Little Blue, who had just needed someone to care. He thought about himself, alone in the orphanage, waiting for someone who never came. That he sent his reply without hesitation. Send them to me. The elder had asked him once why humans helped creatures they had never met. Danny hadn't known how to answer then. But now, watching the stars from his new home, he understood. Humans fixed broken things. Not just engines. Not just ships. Futures point one small act of kindness at a time.